here at the very beginning, but we're very pleased that you're here this morning. There are some sign-in sheets going around since this is one of the ATD-related professional development events. We have been asked to keep sign-ins, and then we can tell how many folks have participated in various professional development events for the Achieving Your Dream. So
good morning. I'm Sandra Chambers. I am one of the college's 3 certified trainers in the AHA process. You heard Dr. Newberry talk this morning about the foundational pieces of Achieving the Dream. And one of those was the under-resourced professional development. And out of that has grown, and for us to learn about who our students are from a socioeconomic perspective. We have a great understanding of who our students are academically. As Dr. Newberry said this morning, our core mission is to be the open door to education to the community. For those students who are not college ready, meaning they don't have the standard ACT or SATs, and they can't get admission into the 4-year institutions. We also heard him say that once they start with us, they do extremely well once they move on. So that's our core mission. That part we knew really, really well. The other part, what we didn't know really well and we couldn't really speak to was the conditions that our students come from that they would show up sometimes in the classroom and just make us go, oh, what was that about? Why do students do those things? So this morning that's what we're going to talk about this morning. Just briefly, by show of hands, how many of you have attended a PD on this before? Bethany Tucker? Okay, great. How many of you have participated in a book club? Great. Okay, so, and I'm saying great because, it helps us to know who our audience is, how many of you have had in-depth conversations about this. One of the things that we're learning, Sherry, Rhonda, and I, is that there's just so many layers to this and so many different ways for it to be introduced. Depending on where you are and what you do, there's a way for this to be refreshed, for it to be new.
I guess we should tell you who we are. We know most people, but I'm Sherry Williams, and as Sandra said, there are 3 of us in the college who have been certified in the AHA process, which relates to the under-resourced student information. I am the director of the library at the downtown campus, also responsible for Carrollton and Tech, and then I do this as well, and I teach at Blake.
And I am the Associate Dean of Students. My main jobs have to do with student code of conduct and just helping students to understand and navigate the process.
So today, we do have some learning objectives. Hopefully what we will be doing today is helping increase the awareness of the assumptions that we make about our students. I know as Sandra was saying, I've certainly had an experience in the classroom or in the library, and I make an assumption about why that student may have done that, or some assumption about that student's capabilities, or fill in the blank. And this process, this information has really made me consider those assumptions, and hopefully now I am not viewing things only through my own lens. We're going to talk a little bit today about lenses. We see things through our lens, but the under-resourced student may certainly have a different lens through which they see the world. And so the reasons that we would attribute to certain behavior may not at all be the reasons that actually relate to that student's behavior. So hopefully we will begin to evaluate student behavior not through just our personal lens, but also consider that behavior through the other lenses as well, and then respond to student behavior based on that broader perspective on, well, do I really understand why the student did this particular thing? So that's what we hope you'll leave with today. And are we ready to roll? Yes.
Anyone still need to sign in?
So, we're in our third year of Achieving the Dream, and initially, when we began to have this conversation as a collective body, many people really heard this behind-the-scene message of, we have to lower standards. Many of us saw that. You know, many of us thought, well, you know, we just got to lower the standards, you know, got to make sure everybody passes, make sure everyone gets in, make sure everyone qualifies for whatever it needs. And as we've learned over time, no, we aren't lowering standards, but we do need to help our students as well as ourselves understand what it takes for them to get through. So it's not about lowering standards, it's not about making exceptions. In my role, doing the student code of conduct, usually when I would talk to students because they've had some type of issue with violation of student code of conduct, there's no lowering the standard there. There's an expectation of how you should act. What I've learned, of course, is that many of our students come to us not having an appreciation of understanding that the college community is just a mirror of society overall. What I couldn't do in the dealer's department store, I can't do on this campus. I understand that, you all understand that, many of our students do not. So it's not about lowering standards, but I did have to learn that I had to help them understand that. It's also not customer service training, because that was the other thing that people thought that Achieving the Dream was. I just got to turn into some customer service representative. That's not what it is. What it is, though, is becoming bilingual. So as Sherry talked about the lenses you use, so going through the AHA training, I got my own personal AHA moment. I've always considered myself a very open person, a very empathetic person, a very understanding person, a very compassionate person. And I am. However, when I first started here in 2002, I would typically say to a student, oh, get yourself together. You don't want to squander this opportunity for an education. That's not a bad thing to say, but that's a very middle-class norm. It's what I heard my parents say to us. It's what I say to my children. It's what now we say to our grandchildren. It's not a bad thing. The person on the other side of my desk would look at me. I had no idea, though. They were thinking, you have no idea what it took for me to even get to campus today. I ran out of disposable diapers, so I couldn't take my baby to daycare. I had to go to my neighbor and once again ask for a favor, knowing that she was going to ask for a favor in return. I finally got to the bus stop only to miss the first bus and had to take the second bus. That student's point of view was survival. My point of view was generations of being told education is the way. So it wasn't bad, but it was from my perspective. So I had to learn how to alter that message. I still have to give that same message because that's basically who I am. That's basically why we're here. But I had to understand the lenses that I was using to deliver that message. And I had to become bilingual. I had to first learn to hear them. To say, well, when you go back to class, you need to make sure you use a different way of telling your instructor why you were late. Not just saying, hey, I'm here now. Right? Because again, if you're in survival mode, if you make it to point A, you think you've done something. So it's about becoming bilingual.
I think we should have watched the video or skip it. It's about 2 minutes.
Let's watch. Okay. So, but that was my own personal, evolution. I thought, oh my gosh, those aren't bad things I'm saying, but it was the perspective. And I think once you have that moment for yourself, it begins to become more clear too.
It's there somewhere.
The one with the cat.
Okay.
something funky.
It's the one that says don't judge too quickly.
Yeah. And it was there, but now the window's
Yeah,
open.
okay.
Okay, hold on.
So, you know, we've all had those, oh, here we are.
All right, now the
Sound.
sound. Maybe not. Anybody know anything about sound?
Check the sound on the YouTube up there.
The other sound.
So it's underneath. The speaker's probably not on.
Okay. This is not my home technology spot here. Oh my goodness, where's Jeffrey?
Thank you, Jeffrey. So, you know how we all feel about technology.
All right, Jeffrey's done it, that's it. I just did it.
Look at the cute dogs.
All the boys are calling crazy girl. I hope she sings this tonight. I know. Hey, God, pull over. We need to go.
Oh, honey? Here's some money.
What do we got here? Patient has a fractured fibula. Give him a mild sedative. So he can be able to go in tomorrow.
Daddy's gonna be so excited.
That killed him.
Yeah, come on.
American West Mortgage, proud sponsor of the NFL.
Okay.
So, as you can see, it's really easy to make the wrong assumption by not knowing all the information. And, you know, the other though, I think that we can all relate to is that we've all been at our desk when the computer did something other than turn on. And we just kind of back away from it, throw our hands up and just look around. And unfortunately, Jeffrey's not always in that room with us when that happens. But just think about how you feel when that happens, right? You feel as though you just went to a foreign country, you don't know the language. And you knew it yesterday. And you know you're a smart person. But the same computer that you turned on Thursday, when you turn it on today, did something that you weren't familiar with. And it just made you feel inadequate. Our students come to us with a skill set, an intellect to learn. It's the environment that's different. But anyway, I think that video helps us move to that. Oh, I have a next. So, one of the things that is a difficult conversation about all of this has to do with class structure. Because in America, we really don't like to think that we have class structure. But we do. We have economic class structure. We don't have, you know, monarchies and things like that. But we do have poverty, middle class, working class, and the wealthy. And then the class structure, the social classes is about comparison, envy, and judgment. And economic class is about resources. What resources are available to an individual to stabilize and improve their lives. And poverty has to do with the extent that a person has lived in poverty and cannot sustain themselves. And what we're talking about here is at least 2 generations. At least 2 generations have lived in sustained poverty. Versus my grandchildren now who are, I like to say my mom and dad were working class because that's what I thought, that's what I knew. And then how I evolved, my children and now my grandchildren. My grandchildren's world is completely different than even my children's world. Completely different. I have a view about working that's different than my grandchildren because I was raised by working class parents. So generational poverty, though, has that same element. There are 2 generations or more of people having lived in poverty. So just like in my family and your family, those things that are passed on, that sustain from one generation to the next. My grandchildren understand now at 5 and 7 that you should go through school, K through 12, and then you go into college. So saying to them those formative your education opportunities, they could relate to that. Versus many of our students that we see. Generational poverty, though, is different than situational poverty. As a woman, if tomorrow I was divorced and had a major health crisis and lost my health insurance, I would be in situational poverty. The difference would be is that I also have the middle class norms as a foundation to move myself forward. That's the difference. So, Jefferson Community and Technical College is a middle class institution. Its norms, how we operate, I always like to talk about how faculty are developed. There are standards and protocols. After all of your years of education, in order for you to move forward, to become a full-time instructor, and to get through those different ranks and tenure, there are standards and protocols that you fully accept. Those are middle class norms. So everything that we do at this institution is based on that, from how it functions, the environment it's in, how we function internally, and that goes to expectations. So when we're dealing and talking with our students, when they walk into your classroom 10 minutes late, you're appalled. They're like, I made it. The middle class norm says you need to be 5-10 minutes early. But remember now, with everything, right? Because there are some institutions that, we won't say this out loud, they're deciding perhaps not to have tenure professors. We don't know where those claims they fell from, right? But there are patterns to everything. So you may get 5 students from generational poverty and one may not fit all of the patterns. And we don't want to begin to say that even everyone from middle class doesn't all act the same. We've all experienced that. People get up and go to work every day and you're like, I don't know, a lot of Joneses won't cut their grass. What's up with that? Everyone in the neighborhood is mowing their grass. When are they going to get a clue? So we can even see in middle class, I always like to say / working class, that not everyone follows the expected norms. So, resources. In the AHA process, there are 11 resources that have been identified, and of course one of them is financial. And financial security is important, but it's not the most important. Think about your students sometimes who seem to have no ability to control their emotions. They lack that resource of having emotional stability. You say something to them and there's papers fly everywhere, they get upset. They seem to think that you personally got up that day to attack them. They lack their emotional stability. And so resources are internal and external. Our students come to us not having knowledge of our hidden rules, not having knowledge of how we function. We come to work every day really not thinking about it because it's what we live and breathe. We went through the collegiate process ourselves. So coming to work isn't putting us in a foreign environment. It's a very familiar environment. So if we don't know one particular rule about something, we do know how to go and inquire about what that means. Our students don't bring that. They do, though, bring the mental ability to succeed. We heard Dr. Newberry tell us that this morning. And the external things that we see sometimes is how they act in the language, relationships. So the scenario I gave about the student who showed up late, had to go to her neighbor, ask her to keep her kids, that relationship is a very high resource in poverty. If I had gotten up this morning and my personal car had a flat tire, I had lots of choices. I could have taken my husband's car, I could have called AAA, I could have phoned my colleague and said I was going to be late. I had lots of choices, lots of resources. Our students get up, and if they miss that first TARC bus, it takes them to that second TARC bus. Their day is already spinning out of control. So, as we've alluded to, in the middle class, they're driving forces, work and achievement. My mom and dad got up and went to work every day. I saw that in the middle class, working class, work and achievement is important. Didn't mean that we didn't have strong relationships, didn't mean we didn't value that, but the guiding post in my life, for my brothers and my sister was get up, get an education, go to work. You will be successful. In poverty, that's not always the driving force. Our resources are used in middle class. You save more than you spend. You maintain what you purchase. You mow your grass on a regular basis. You maintain your automobile. Those are values that were instilled in me as a child. Those are not always the values that students growing up in poverty will have. Students growing up in poverty, their driving forces are survival, relationships, and entertainment. Coming here, getting a two-year education is so far off in the future and so abstract that they can't relate to it. What they can relate to is what they can do right now. I'm 10 minutes late. This quiz is important. And you're sitting there thinking, well, if you had planned better, if you had made sure that you're not squandering all of your money, whatever you're thinking, you're thinking. Our students don't always think in the abstract. It's always about right now, the immediate. So, one of the things that we've learned about all of this as we've gone through this training, and as Ron and Sharon and I have conducted this training, is really becoming aware of the clues when we engage our students. I've been doing this now for 2.5 years, and I have not perfected it. Every student that I engage is a challenge. And the moment you begin to think, oh, okay, this is the template that I can lay over, and then every time I talk to a student, I can do this. You will fail each time. Because we're all individuals. When I come to work and I've had a non-stressful day driving in, and that first appointment with a student goes really well. I drive in from LaGrange on 71. So very rarely do I have like a very easy drive. But when I don't, right, that can even make that encounter with that student even more difficult. So there's no there's no patterns to this. There is an awareness, though, of the student that you're speaking with. There's what you need to do as that faculty member or that staff member that's providing service. This is all about educating. So it's in your discipline and how you use the library services, how you use financial aid services, or whatever it may be. But it's not about a template that is a one-size-fits-all. So we are acutely aware of the hidden rules. Our student body is not. That's the most important thing I think we can get from this slide. You know, we've heard Dr. Newberry talk this morning, and we've seen evidence of that. It's not about a lack of intellect. We've seen students, do extraordinarily well here. If you haven't attended an awards night, I strongly encourage you to. You hear personal stories of students who, on paper, looking at where they started, no one ever would have thought they would have achieved it. So I think we've talked about some of these things. And I'm trying to go through quickly because I want us to be able to move into conversation later. So, the time horizon is about right now, especially if everything is about survival, right? How many of you know exactly what you're going to do from now to December? And then probably already have some hint of how you're going to spend your time away from campus. And some of it's, really firmed up in some cases, right? That's how we live and breathe every day. You're going to, classes begin Tuesday, Wednesday? Monday. Okay. I'm on campus all the time, and so how many of you think we have students who have mapped it out of their heads that far? Some of them. Yeah, some of them. But not all of them. Because they're living in the moment right now. They're surviving right now. That's a different framework, isn't it? Some of us know exactly, yes, sir.
I agree with everything you've been saying, and it's one of those difficult things to teach. But one thing that's sort of slightly off the topic is they just come out of a shared 13 years of schooling where they teach kids that we're going to tell you exactly what to do, when to do it. One of my first day lectures in classes that have first day college students is I spend some time talking about the different expectations between what they're used to and what college is like.
I think that's a great point. So, we have a contract as a society. This is just Sandra's view on this. To get kids from K through 12. That's a contract. So kid A may have good family background, good family support, can go through that system and excel and do well. Kid B, not so much. But the societal contract says, we're going to get you through that. And so things are done for them. There's a lot of hand-holding. There's a lot of, okay, well, we can give him another excuse, absence. I've had students say to me who are 28 and 38, their only experience with has been in the public school system. It doesn't matter if they're 18, 28, or 38. If that was their only experience, their expectation is they're going to be gotten through the process. And so that is part of what we have to deal with as well. That was a great point. I'm going to move forward. And Sherry's going to take over.
You saw that one of the resources has to do with language, and whether you're in the classroom or you're in an office, I suspect that each one of us has at some point heard students say something, not, whatever they're saying to each other, that's another thing, but they'll say it to the person at the desk, or they'll say it in the classroom. And for those of us who who grew up in the middle class and who are really clear on what is appropriate, what the hidden rules are, you know, I can remember thinking, what did that student just say? Did that really come out of that student's mouth? Language is often one of the areas that, that is a challenge. A lot of the students who grew up in poverty may not yet understand that certain language is appropriate in the classroom, certain language is appropriate with their friends, and those two situations are different. Every language in the world has a number of registers. As an institution, like a business, we work in the formal register. So this is the language that students should be using and perhaps learning when they're in college. It doesn't mean that the casual register is bad. You know, a lot of times the message that students get is, so you're telling me that how I communicate is not good, is not right. But it's not that at all. It's just what is appropriate. So early on we talked about being bilingual. Students need to understand that this is a tool in their toolbox that will help them later, help them to be successful in school, help them to be more marketable in the job market. One of the things in the other registers, you know, hopefully we don't hear a lot of the intimate register, but you know, sometimes that comes out in humor, sexually explicit jokes or whatever. That should be the language between lovers or the language of sexual harassment. So you can see where it's really important. If you have a student, the driving force is entertainment, so that's how they have been successful. They don't yet understand that certain kinds of humor are not appropriate in the classroom. They can get themselves into really uncomfortable situations quickly if we do not help them to understand the rules. And again, it's not about making exceptions, it's not about lowering our standards. It's like, I was fortunate enough back in the mid-80s, I went to France. And I'm kind of a rule follower, so I went in the train station, and you know, I'm really tall, and it seemed like everybody in France was really short, and they had, there were all these sort of older women in the train station. And I discovered that, unlike in England where everyone queued up, what you do in France is you put out your elbows and you kind of barrel your way to the front. Well, to me, my rules, that's incredibly rude. And I felt really uncomfortable doing that. But I also realized I would probably still be standing in the train station in France if I didn't follow the rules that were normal for that situation. So we need to make sure our students understand what those rules are and that we are not making assumptions about everybody knows that. So language can get them into trouble right away. And just please remember the thing about it's not a judgment about what is good or bad. It's just an additional tool in the toolbox. So what does this sound like? Bethany Tucker, for those of you who went to her session, she shared this. So in the casual register, which I'm sure we've all heard this at the office, at the the service desk, in our classroom, wherever, students who say, this sucks. And so Bethany Tucker said that she had the students translate from one register to another. So what they really meant is there's no longer any joy in this activity. It is unlikely that that's what will come out of the mouths of our students, but it may be what they need to remember if they are, working in an office once they've finished school. In that situation, their boss might not take kindly to a "that sucks." So it's not that we are trying to be difficult or uppity or whatever. It's just giving them the tools they need to succeed later. There's a lot of text on this chart, and I have a chart, a copy of it I'm going to give you. Voices, in addition to learning the language register, we also all have voices, 3 voices. We have the child's voice, we have the parent voice, and we have the adult voice. In poverty, a lot of times, you know, you have students, you have children who are raising their siblings. A lot of times they are not in a household where they ever really hear the adult voice, so that's not modeled for them. The adult voice is the voice of negotiation. It is not judgmental, it is factual. If you are in survival mode, then, and just as a parent, you know, it's really hard for me to be in the adult voice sometimes, where I may say something like, what are your choices in this situation? It's really easier for me to use the parent voice, which sounds more like, you need to do this, or don't do that. You can kind of tell when you're in the parent voice because a lot of times it feels natural to attach a pointing finger with it. You know, and if you are a person who has basically been raising your siblings and surviving in a really tough world, there's often a knee-jerk reaction to somebody else coming to tell you, you know, don't do that, or you need to do this. And so the adult voice offers that student choices. They get to make a decision. I mean, obviously they have the ability to make a decision anyway, but a lot of times they don't view things as decisions. And so when you present things in the adult voice, it changes the dialogue. The child voice, I know we certainly hear this a lot. That's not my fault. You know, you failed me in this class. I want to talk about the fact that I never turned in any papers and I was late every day and I failed the midterm. You failed me. So it's that kind of victim voice. And, you know, as a victim, you don't perceive that you're having a lot of choices because you're not taking responsibility. So we need to practice talking in the adult voice, which then hopefully does generate a different kind of conversation. So why are we talking about under-resourced students? Really quickly, 67% basically of our students are Pell Grant eligible. So 24% receive some kind of federal aid. The average FAFSA filer income $16,000. Our graduation rate might have jumped a hair.
I think it's
13 now, so, you know, progress. But we have a lot of students who are under-resourced. And with that, we don't know if they're in generational poverty or situational poverty, but it is likely that a lot of the students do not come to us understanding what we think of as obvious. Everybody knows that, it's common sense. Everybody knows how this place works, the appropriate behavior, that you don't answer your cell phone in class, that you don't curse at the financial aid person at the counter, you know, whatever. So you can see that if we have students who are at that survival level, and they're focused on now, and we're functioning with the driving force of achievement, and we're talking about the future, then we have things at odds here, and so it becomes really important for us to not make an assumption from our achievement future view about why they haven't done something or what they know or that they understand the importance of actually creating a plan that allows them to have time to do their assignments, that they should try to work it out so that they're not taking the person who babysat for their baby when they couldn't take the baby to the daycare. They have to now take that person to the doctor or whatever, to begin to open up for them the idea of future, and that it's not all what's happening. Okay, so if we look at who our students are, we just talked about that. How do they sound? A lot of times we do hear them using the casual register, and we hear a lot of child and parent, and probably not so much the adult. We worked with some of the offices on campus, and I'm telling you, the adult voice is challenging. It's really easy to fall into one of the other voices. So I would encourage you to practice. How do they act? Behavior based on driving forces of survival or relationships or entertainment. The use of humor is really important. If a driving force is entertainment, that's a release, a relief valve when you are in a really stressful life. And the student comes and, is the class clown. Sometimes the humor is focused on people and sex rather than on whatever the context of the conversation is. And for us, those of us who are familiar with the middle class norms, we might find that appalling. Everybody knows that's inappropriate, but not everybody does know that it's inappropriate. Personality is valued and used for entertainment. So again, that entertainment, that humor, the personality factors that we might be looking for are that, perseverance and achievement and, the focus. But that's not necessarily aligned with the characteristics that bring someone popularity or success if you're living in poverty. And then clothing valued for individual style and expression of personality as opposed to maybe what is considered the appropriate clothing in a particular setting. I can remember early on I had a young woman who came and interviewed for the secretary's position in the library probably 15 years ago. And I realize now that what she was wearing was probably her best dress. It is not what I would have ever shown up for a job interview in. I mean, it's what she probably might wear when she goes out on Saturday night to the club. And I'm thinking, this is not going to work, But for her, I realized that it was probably a calculated decision. Okay, I need to wear my best things. So I made assumptions at that point which were probably not accurate. So what we've done so far is really give you an overview of the recognizing the under-resourced students, but we've got an activity here because we don't want to just...
That's expected, right?
So let's see.
We've got to have some kind of work to do. Can't just have us stand up here and talk to you.
So let's maybe, there are 4 scenarios here. You can work in pairs or groups of 3 or, whatever. If you're one who likes to work alone, then you can do that. We have, and everybody can take the form, just that if you want to work together, you can. So we have 4 scenarios. Each scenario includes behavior that you may have experienced here at the college. There's more coming. So what I'd like you to do is, first off, think about assumptions that you might make about that student based on that sort of middle class thinking. Why did they do what they did? And what assumptions do you make about that student viewed from that lens? And then based on that, what response might you have for that student, verbal or some kind of action, when you're only viewing through the middle class lens? The middle class view that is the Jefferson institutional view. Then I want you to think of what it might look like through the student lens, if that student is an under-resourced student. Is there a one? And what assumptions might we make now when we're looking not just through our own lens, but also, well, now that what I know about under-resourced students, and I do have handouts that will help, it might change my assumptions. And then what kind of response might you have if you're looking at it through both lenses? And remember, it's not about lowering standards. It is not about making exceptions. it is about informing. And here are some handouts about the hidden rules, and I also have one about voices. There should be 2 handouts plus your scenario.
Okay, I need to get them on the voices for you.
Is better than nothing.
Say that. I'd say that's okay. Life's not fair.
Maybe a couple more minutes and then we'll see if you will share some of your correspondence.
That's the way I think of it.
Okay, I realize you didn't have a lot of time, but in an effort to get us back on track for the rest of the day, the first scenario, so you've got the class clown, disruptive, and by the way, on a lot of these, I think I used the gender, the male gender. That was just.
It's usually us.
It's because you heard what Mark said. Disrupts class with comments intended as humorous, seems to want to be the center of attention. So what assumptions might you have made about that student if you had never heard about any of this under-resourced student? Yes?
Maybe they're under the influence or something.
Possibly. Any other assumptions? Yes?
Attention seeking, inappropriate, disruptive.
Okay.
Disrespectful.
Disrespectful. Okay. And so, if that's what's going on in your head, how might you have responded to that student? Okay, yes,
Threaten to call security.
okay,
Please stop. You may be making others uncomfortable. That's it.
okay.
I was gonna say, everybody's saying it so much nicer. I probably would have handled it just nicely, but in class, I probably would have, I mean, I would love to say, I would have, of course, said something appropriate, like, I need to see you after class. But if I was caught very off guard, I probably would have confronted them right there, and now I'm being judged.
And, no, I think you were brave enough to speak up. And a lot of
Absolutely not treat like that in class. I mean, I think I would have gotten very.
parent voice.
I thought this was right before class happened, not in class. You see the difference? It's setting the tone before you go into the class. So it's a difference, a little bit of a tweak in the scenario for me.
Okay, because this one I actually had disrupts class, but that's okay. So is there anything you would do differently if you're filtering it through the information about the under-resourced student? Or that you would think differently?
Well, one thing that I do is, whenever possible, I pray and pause and see whether students will correct. And so that you got somebody in their own, well, not only peer pressure, just somebody in their own social register.
Okay,
Because they're gonna listen to that.
okay.
And I just, then I'll have to do it now.
We're talking about the assumption through their view, their lens, or we're talking about the response?
Either one. So, but now you're filtering all of this through not just the middle class lens, but also through thinking about the under-resourced student material.
Oh, okay. Just saying.
Yes. I'm sorry.
One thing that I've realized a lot of people will crack jokes, and this is really regardless of, I think, of socioeconomic or being under that. Just, they don't really know the material. They don't know what's going on. They feel lost, and to hide that, people will joke. So they ask some questions, see if they actually understand what the subject is about, whatever they're going over. If not, go back and clarify.
Okay.
And people won't often say, yes, I have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, you just have to identify that yourself.
Okay? Oh,
I was just gonna say, one of the things in talking to my students that I've realized is that they want to think of the professors, this is being very general right now, but as friends, which when I was in college, could care less, that they were my professor, they were up there. And so that's something that we've had, the relationship's very important, but I have my friends, you have yours, but we can still have a relationship, and that, just clear, I view as that appropriate relationship, I have to clarify that with them. So that would be a different way.
absolutely.
We had said that kind of turning it back on them, kind of using your powers for good, so that students joking a lot, picking up and even complimenting them on their good rapport with their classmates, but then turning it back to the task at hand and learning. So, you obviously get along well with your classmates. What do you think about this, and turning it back so that you use that social, that social context, but then get the focus back on the task.
Good, because you haven't you've rewarded them or acknowledged them for something that they're doing well, but begun to guide them. We are out of time. Really quickly on scenario 4. Anybody, this is the angry student who knew, was told about SOAR. Some, half of them, no, somebody has scenario 4.
Oh, okay.
Anybody, any comments on scenario 4?
Which was?
Student is angry because employee will not allow him to join the SOAR group 40 minutes late, even though this information was clearly communicated in advance. He states it's not his fault that he's late, so he should be able to participate.
Not ready for college. That's exactly what that was my first thought.
First thought. And how would you maybe filter that through the under-resourced student list? Yes.
Ask them, what happened this morning? It's like maybe the car broke down, maybe they got lost, maybe there was an accident on the way to school and they were causing traffic for 20 or 30 minutes. I have students that come from night courses and they're coming from work, and sometimes if they're directly Gene Snyder, I'll ask them, how's traffic tonight? And if I realize they're running behind, I know I'm going to be filtering in.
And so, in SOAR though, it's pretty,
Regiment, so you might have
So-
said there's another one right after this one, stick around that way.
Right.
How do we get you caught up?
yeah.
How do we get you back to the trend line?
And, and that's really, that's really the next important piece to this, because we've always been interested in students being successful academically. But let's just be honest, now it's a personal statement for us.
Retention means that we're all back here next year.
And that doesn't mean we allow anything, but we do have to really have that understanding. If I can just put my code of conduct hat on for just a moment, we're not talking about people getting out of control and acting crazy. But we're hoping that through this training, you will begin to first be able to take a deep breath, step back, and not say, don't squander your opportunity for this education. I have to do that every day, because that's where I live and breathe. So
We're out of time.
we're out of time.
We would love to talk to you more. We have 2 additional sessions, but we'll also be doing things during the school year. So, or if you in your area are interested in some kind of training, contact either one of us or Rhonda Orman. Thank you all for your attention.
And if you make